All right, we're back reading. I'm back here. Had to take a little break. Somebody knocked on the door. Okay, now what are some other factors? This is a good chapter because factors is not something I talk about as much, but family is very important. And what is that? Do you have people in the family that have learned English as a second language? It can be negative in the sense that sometimes people pressure their kids to learn English and refuse to speak their first language. Like, we don't speak Spanish anymore. I've heard this from many people talking about their ancestors. He said, my grandfather never spoke Spanish after my grandparent or my parents arrived here. He told them, learn English because it won't do any good to learn Spanish. Let's don't keep our language. This is a tragedy. It's a tragedy. And there's obviously evidence that the better you are in your first language, both speaking and listening, and good conversational skills, and it affects personality too. But also having parents that read to you in your first language, reading and writing some in the first language in the home is going to promote students reading and writing when they learn those skills in school. Parents, you want to involve parents, get them involved learning English, get them involved in sharing their culture in their first language. It's important to have books in the home. That's huge. All kinds of books, Spanish, English, whatever the first language is. It makes a difference. Taking pride in one's culture, being settled and confident in who they are and what they're looking at in terms of opportunities means they will not be turned away. They will not be discouraged because if there's discrimination or some hateful talk, or if they're ignored at times, or if they feel, they won't be discouraged. They won't give up. And persistence is huge, but it's not the persistence of just studying English. It's a persistence of wanting to participate in the culture, but also wanting to maintain who they are as well. A lot of people say, no, you forget that first culture. You're in America, you got to be an American. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be an American? There are all kinds of Americans of all different language backgrounds and ethnicities. And so when someone gets up and makes these nonsense speeches, it's not patriotic to trash your own house. Just remember that. Respect the house of others and the culture of others, but don't trash your own culture. Look what's happened to cultures that have been conquered and there was genocide or whatever you want to call it. Native Americans. I mean, now we're struggling to keep Native American languages functioning. Maybe they're not of much use anymore, but what a tragedy that there are only 5 speakers left of Arapaho, or only 20 speakers left of Osage, or what was the one in eastern Nebraska, the Omaha. The language is very rare now. They're trying to get kids to use the language, but it gets to be very artificial because they're not using it. They're only using sounds and repeating things they hear from elderly people. But so you want to maintain the language. Quality of instruction. This is really an interesting area. Why is it interesting? Because a lot of times you have to advocate for your students. Your ESL students will not get the first choice in technology. They may not get the first choice in quality textbooks. They may get leftover scraps of textbooks. Not that they're all bad, but there may not be money to buy bilingual books or to buy even good graded readers for them to use to move up to different levels and improve their reading. There may not be money for flashcards or money for computer programs. And so a lot of times the ESL teacher is either manufacturing their own flashcards or they're trying to find free stuff. They may use Google Translate, which is not going to set the house on fire. It's not that great. So you've got to stand up and say, this, for my students, I need this. And you want to find allies. You want to find other teachers in the school that are empathetic, that may that will also be working with your students and say, maybe we need to go do a cultural unit. And well, we got students from Guatemala, and we want to talk about all kinds of things about Guatemala, and we want to have a culture club in our high school, or have parents come and bring everything from clothing, whatever, from that culture, to help other students understand what multicultural is and to respect it. I'm not going to say much about the different learning theories. I don't feel that's going to be particularly useful. I talk about developmental and cognitive. I'm a great believer in the social interaction. I believe you learn language from people, and the collective language use, collective intelligence is one of the best ways to give people a positive feeling about talking with others and doing projects with others, and that we are social creatures, and that social interaction is the way we learn language. Not that there are individuals that can't just learn it, so these things like stage learning theories. Doesn't impress me that much. I mean, it's very theoretical. I don't know if it's very practical. And I like the social aspect. I don't like the idea of you're going to insert language into their minds through special programs, and they're going to memorize, or they're going to go through and do vocabulary exercises. To me, the language that you learn is the language that you use, whether it's writing or listening or speaking or whatever. It's going to be implementing an authentic language is very, very critical. So you want to create circumstances in your school where English is going to be, there are going to be situations where and students will do a lot of this naturally. They make friends, they're going to learn English. So a lot of times, as I mentioned, the opposite that's often ignored, losing the first language, is something you want to look at. And you might want to, in the case of Spanish, you have a Spanish teacher in school. There's a lot of natural complementary relationships and lessons you could come up with there to help. So I think social interaction is by far the most important of these. I'm not a behaviorist. Yeah, I realize that, talks about how it has to be controlled. We're not doing a mouse running around in a maze looking for cheese. That's behaviorism, and trying to shape their behavior. Language teaches behavior within the social constructs, the rules of the language, the protocol, what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do. Kids will pick that up, and language is not an abnormal learning thing. It's very natural. So in our next chapter, we're going to look at sheltered instruction, but I see language impressed. I mean, if you think about the kinds of students, you want to promote those personality characteristics or help develop them so that they are given a chance to go outside of their shell, to interact with other people. And don't let people tell you that, well, the high school kids are not capable of learning a language. You're too old. Something froze up in their brain. Your brain is constantly changing and is flexible. And I don't let people buy into that they're too old to learn. It's because they've got that idea in their head. They believe they're too old to learn. It's not the same as running, and you can run better at age 16 than you can at 30 or at 50. But you can still exercise, and you can still use your muscles, and you can still achieve a lot. I know, because I run stairs. I don't run them. I take weights and I walk stairs. But I do very, very intensive exercise that most young people couldn't hack it. I'm bragging, but that's okay. We got a president that brags. I don't know why I can't brag just a little. I hope you like the shirt again. It's very cool. And I do like coffee, and I like 3 of you, whoever's watching at the time. Okay, that's my little video for today, and I hope you enjoy. Bye.